Yeah, we can. We can.
Whatever comes up, okay, brother? Okay.
For sure. Oh, most definitely.
Welcome, WarriorSage family. I have a wonderful man of peace, of power, of wisdom, of clarity, my friend Inpu. And in our wonderful introduction through Brig Feltus, where we had a beautiful meeting, and I got a chance to meet and to feel the depth of your vast experience in the internal arts. I coming from a Kung Fu background, more of an external art, but I have great reverence and practice, little practice, but great reverence and respect for the internal arts, which we will all hear about for those of you who aren't familiar. And I'm very grateful for you coming today, because, you know, in my encounter with you, there's this great warmth, but I know it's backed up by great experience. So thank you so much, sir, for being with us. And we're very grateful for your presence and your sharing today.
Well, thank you very much for having me and for sharing. And, you know, I'm still getting to know everyone in the WarriorSage community. So I'm excited for this opportunity to share and have y'all get to know a bit more about me using this process as opposed to us just interacting directly as well. So I look forward to it. Peace.
Thank you. So Inpu, and what is is it the full name, Inpu Kamut?
You can Inpu's great. Inpu's great. Yeah, no, that's a
Share about that. I want to know. Please share about that for us.
Okay, so so my name was given to me by the high priest of the temple that I was in. I was initiated in the early 90s into the Temple of the White and Gold Lotus Shrine of Amun-Ra, which is one of the three oldest Kemetic shrines in the United States. So you had the Asar Set Society, you had the Temple of Ptah, and then the Temple of the White and Gold Lotus Shrine of Amun-Ra, which is where I was initially initiated. I'm no longer directly connected with them, but that was where I was initially initiated. It's been almost about 25 years ago, maybe almost 30 years since I've been initiated. I started studying in '89 with my teacher, Aijihuti Hirukuti, and that was where I began learning Tai Chi Chuan and Qigong, the meditation systems, and the history and the practice of the healing practices and the martial practices. And the name came with the initiation, and then the initiation not just into, so those of you familiar with martial practice, a lot of times when someone is taken on as a disciple,
yes,
you know, there'll also be a name change. So in our system, you don't just come in as a disciple, but it's also full on initiation into the priesthood and all the healing aspects, as well as some of the more, the title was given at that time was Hemnicher, or Servant of Spirit. So I'm knowledgeable in all of the priestly activities connected to the Kemetic practice. So that'd be like consultations, all the things, you know, consultations, those sorts of things. People may call them readings, consultations, alternative healing, conversation, dialogues, traditional uses for healing plants and plant medicines, house blessings, weddings, those sorts of things. So in addition to the martial arts and the yoga and the breathing and the meditation. And so the name Inpu Kamut loosely means opener of the way for the spirit of the mother.
wow.
And so a great deal of my work has been, you know, one, cultivating compassion and nurturing, but it's also to help people really understand community in a different way. That in many of the communities that I'm working with that are suffering from, not decades, more like centuries of grief and imposed poverty, you know, in a variety of ways, you know, desire to disrupt the cultural transmission across generations. You know, a great deal of my work has been to help us remember the beauty of our culture, the way in which we practice, and the things that I've gotten, not just from the temple, but also from my great-grandparents, from my grandparents, from my parents, and my elders in my community, to pour into me the wisdom of our ancestry in a variety of ways. And so, long way to say Inpu is good.
Thank you. That's beautiful. this lineage that you share about is so multidimensional. It covers so the full gamut of our human and metaphysical experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can you share with us, you know, I want to go right to the heart. When we were coming on here, we're in a very intense time right now on
Yes, we
so
are.
many fronts,
Mm-hmm.
individually and as society. Can you share with me what's strong in your heart about what's going on right now on the planet?
Well, right now, I mean, there's I mean, that's tough. I mean, so the quick answer is I'm concerned about the lack of support for the feminine. I mean, continuing the understanding and structure of my name, dealing, being one placed here at this time to do this work, knowing that a great deal of the kind of dying off or rebalancing of the planet and this kind of a out of balance patriarchal process of, the wounded masculine aspect of what's occurring, as that healing and balance comes back into place, we want it to occur in a way that really actively supports and appreciates the feminine. And so that has a lot of ways that is manifesting. And the challenge right now is way that's hitting me today is just that my mind is around Breonna Taylor and the community, not just of Louisville, but all the communities of urban places in Los Angeles and really around the world. This young woman who, through no fault of her own, was murdered by the Louisville Metro Police Department, and in the decision by the attorney, it was to one officer that was actually indicted was indicted for wanton endangerment because he shot into the apartments of the other folks that were surrounding her place. So there's no one being held responsible for her death. There's no one being held responsible for what happened to her. And so while people are saying that, yes, this man was indicted, he was indicted for what happened to her neighbors, not for what happened to Breonna Taylor. And so it's another example for those of us that want to talk about, understand the process, learn the process, go through the process, support, work with the system to make these things occur. It gets very challenging when people consistently show you the direction that they're going to move in. And particularly as we transition, because I'm also leading the end of a community fast. So as we move and transition into this season, this is, if you're doing traditional Chinese medicine, some aspects, this is the season for the lungs and the large intestine as you move into fall. And the lungs are what usually carry grief, as many of you know. And so, for lack of a better term, those that are dealing with police brutality issues have been dealing with grief for a very long time. I'll be kind and say for a very long time, but really since coming to this country, my ancestors have been dealing with and processing grief. So I know a lot of times we're not going to deal with spiritual bypassing here, but the tools that I have been given and taught have been to aid us in directly confronting the emotion, ways to live with the emotion, direct it in a constructive and productive way so that we can continue to, really just almost exist as human beings in a space that doesn't want us to exist as human beings. And, having, 5 children, I'm a happy father, 4 daughters, one son. The son is the youngest. I was struck very differently when my daughters were being impacted. It wasn't until they got to college and moved out that we were reviewing, all the safety and security and martial arts and all that stuff. Is because, look, you're going to be away from home. These are things, remember who you are and all of those things. And it didn't hit as hard as it's hitting with my son, who has grown up in this world where, because I'm a high conflict mediator as well. So a lot of times, depending on the situation, I respond to these kind of community conflicts. And so it's really tough when you see, like, my son is like, "Oh, Baba, hey, Baba, is that tear gas?" And he was 3 at the time. It was 2013. I think it was Mike Brown. I was working with my teams around what was going on in Ferguson and St. Louis, and I was torn because I was working from home to help support my team that was my the team was on the ground, and my 3-year-old is now talking about just after a week, it's like, oh Bob, oh hey, they're shooting tear gas at the people, and it wasn't his recognition that it was tear gas that disrupted me. So it was more that many folks would never understand, and they'll see this little boy and it's cute and the boy joy, and not understand that this is like many children around the world that are dealing with imperialism and colonialism and its vestiges know what tear gas is, and that tear gas on folks in other countries is considered a war crime, is considered other like peaceful protesters, but here in the United States it's used on its own citizens, and we don't. So I don't want the whole conversation to be about be about this, but it is heavy on my heart when you're having this conversation with young people and you know that there are so many people hurting, and they don't know that the tools that can aid them, because this is not a one generation fight, this is not a one-day fight. And so if you aren't taking care of your internal organs, if you aren't eating right, you burn out, you get sick, and many times you just die and the system chugs right along. And we know that in order to address these things in long-term ways and effective ways, the tools that I practice, the tools that you practice, we know that that's why the warlords went after Shaolin Temple, went after Wu Dang Temple. It's like they're helping the people learn how to see what's going on and organize and get free. And so that's really the role that I've been playing in trying to aid the people in seeing ways to manage the stress, utilize the foods appropriately, and teaching in a way that says, you know what your eyes see. So they can't lie to you anymore. You know where you come from. You know your history. You know what your people have always done. So even when they sell it back to you, they can't sell it to you in a way that you are not able to decipher and decide and choose if you want to support it.
Yes.
And that's where we are, is that, in terms of community, what is it that we're going to do? And are the folks that stand with us in brotherhood, that want freedom and liberation for all, how do we work together in ways that, what does that support look like? And what does community really look like? Because I know if I saw an injustice happening to my friend or to you and your family, I'm right there. And
Absolutely.
and so my concern to my brothers and sisters out there is, you know, it's time to step up to the plate. It's time for us to really do what we know is right. This is not about politics. This is about right and wrong.
There's a mind virus and a heart virus, I feel, that's gone in very deep in the psyche of society.
Oh yeah.
It continues to bury us and to inflame our divisions, to get
Mm-hmm.
us to side with each other. And the system feeds off this. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the faces are. These demons, one
Mm-hmm.
side is demonized. First of all, you have to demonize a whole bunch of people within your own party to get to the top.
Right,
And
right.
then when you get to the top, then they're all friends now.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now you have to start demonizing everyone on this side
Uh-huh.
who they have already gone through their self-demonization process to
Mm-hmm,
come up with
mm-hmm.
the top demon.
Right, right.
Now the top demons, like if just the architecture
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at a soul level is so antithesis to community,
Mm-hmm.
to wholeness. You know, uncle, brother, what would you say regarding us? Like, there's many of us I know here as warrior sages are feeling the truth of this. What's the bridge? What do we need to do so we're no longer tolerating the past? What do you see in that?
I mean, for me, it's simple. It's one of my elders, Booker T. Washington, talked a bit about this. Put your bucket down where you are. Sad when you see it happening. You don't have to be the center. Center the voices of the young people. center the voices of the people who are being directly impacted. When you're doing your work, who's not here that should be in here? Who should be represented? If you're doing, give an example, I had a colleague who was worked in probation for the county of Los Angeles. And one of the things that he would do is before he would make a policy change, he would force his staff to go and live in the community where the policy change was going to be implemented with some of the people in the community. Spend the weekend there and live with the people that are going to have to be the recipients of the policy change. So many of us may be in positions of power, but do not understand what's happening in terms of the implementation of the very power that we wield. And a great deal of time, give an example, there was it reminds me of a story, it was this rich man, and he was working, and one of his employees was working, and he was a janitor. And so the janitor was working, and he always noticed this janitor had a good attitude, a smile, but he was basically check to check. And the gentleman owned the company, went home, and his son had a live-in that basically took care of him, and he went to school, and he had the finest people. And so then he went home, and he said, you know, son, I think I want to show you something. There's a worker of mine. I think, you know, we want to go and we're going to have dinner with their family. So you can see, he talks to the janitor at his job. He says, oh, my family would love to host you. I hope, okay, my family would love to host you. Sure, come on through. And so they had what I call a superfood dinner, you know, which is beans, rice, some leafy greens from, you know, earthy part of the world, tropical part of the world, superfoods. So they ate dinner, and they didn't have a lot, but they shared it. They had, you know, so like a hibiscus tea, and then they sat and they chatted. And then if they said they're going to sit outside and watch the sunset together, and the family then cleaned up, and the family's doing their thing, and everyone is taking their role and their function at this small family. And the gentleman says, I thank you so much for sharing with us. We really appreciated everything. And he's driving home, and they're in their limo, and the father says to the son, said, so son, what did you learn? And he said, Father, I never realized how poor we were.
Oh.
He said that even with all these things, I almost never see you. I'm grateful that you showed me this so that I will never forget this.
Wow.
And that was something that I always carry with me, is that what is it that you really see? Because some folks are so poor, they only have money to give. And I'm not saying that don't do that if that's all that you have, because there are folks, because of the nature of the imperial and capitalist structure here, some folks are going to have more, and that may be what they have. That's their contribution. You know, if you look at some of the successful pieces in this country, Black Panther Party for Self-Defense will be one group, the Young Lords. You know, you have these models of folks that have done this work, that have had significant success in addressing the systemic issues over time. The piece is that how does it get sustained? And so that is where we talk about cross-community support and work. And that is where our gatherings of folks in terms of martial arts, in terms of healing, in terms of food, in terms of mentorship, in terms of access, in terms of, like I have a colleague who's doing building affordable housing. And so we're talking about ways to get their staff so that they can see how they would advertise like multi-level, multi-income housing with an emphasis on getting folks. And it's like, well, what would it take for you to live there? You know, because the people who live in those communities are impoverished. They didn't choose to be the way that they are in that space. So it's like everybody wants to live in a nice spot, you know, and what are the support structures in place to aid that and make that happen? And that is where we really need to, I mean, that's where the deeper, the long-term conversation needs to begin to happen. And you know, a lot of times I've talked to folks around because my work is not just around this, but it's also in doing the men's work. So now we're talking about healing emotionally, healing physically, being able to be a full whole person. And some of us have the tools to share that. So men's circles, uh, if you're on the golf course and you know your friend is implementing a racist policy, or hey man, look, I know we've been friends a long time. I just got to say, I have some questions about this thing you're doing with your business. I know I'm not, we don't usually talk about that, but when stuff is right or wrong, you've always come to me, and I need to, this is on my heart to say this to you. And, that can happen on the back nine, or that can happen over lunch. But the point is that we're at a place now where it has to happen, where we have to be in a place where we can speak with one another, not to each other, not at each other. And like, as you hear me, I'm passionate, but it's not antagonistic.
Yes.
And what I really want folks to grasp about this is the same thing with the martial science and the martial arts for me, is that, we come from, there's a saying out of what the Tai Chi Chuan's classics, which says that my response to the opponent's movements fills them with wonder. And it's like that's a very poetic way of saying somebody can get knocked the F out.
Yes.
you know, or that you snapped a limb, you severed a tendon, you torn some muscle, because that really is what Tai Chi is about. Most people don't understand that Tai Chi works like that. And so for me, that's what I'm talking about. Is I want you to be filled with awe when we finish this. I didn't look at it that way. I didn't think about it that way. And I want to be able to listen to you, because I know that there's a way that we can find a way that we can connect and we can agree and we can work together to change this world. And I know that because I've talked with neo-Nazis. I've talked with white supremacists, the so-called, right-wing white supremacists. I've sat down and had direct dialogue and conversation with them, as well as the ones that I say are more closeted, the ones that feel that they're liberal or that they're progressive and don't see their racism every day.
So in that very moment, right?
Yes, yes.
When you're with someone like a racist,
Uh-huh.
okay, whatever those intents, please share with us what's your inner process that doesn't get you inflamed, that doesn't like in that moment, because that's what I'd love to capture for us to take on as a practice.
Sure. First, it's that one, I'm listening. And I know this may catch a lot of folks, but this is a pure listening. It's also that I've already, in the advance of it, knowing that I'm going to have this conversation, I've done my research so that I know everything there is to know about whatever topic we're going to talk about. So be it the 13th Amendment, be it the 14th Amendment, be it the Second Amendment in terms of United States conversation, or be it world history. And, we're talking about different topics and how different things interact. I want to have the accurate information so that we can have the dialogue that's appropriate. So that way, as I'm listening, and also I like to use what many folks refer to as appreciative inquiry. I ask a lot of questions because, again, I come from a mediation background. And my goal, again, from Tai Chi Chuan is I'm not meeting force with force. I want to be able to let that energy express itself, and I want to engage, neutralize, and redirect, and then make a choice as to what I want to do. So in other words, I want that person, and in terms of Tai Chi Chuan, we try to get to the root. And so in that conversation, if I can uproot you, in other words, if I'm able to, you're talking up here, and my conversation and dialogue is down here, you're not going to be able to stand on what you're saying, and you're going to have to sit and really think and really listen. And what really has happened is a great number of these folks are emotionally wounded, are hurt in ways that they're not able to talk about directly and openly, publicly. And so that once we start having the conversation, I'm listening, but I'm not listening to attack. My thing is, are you sure that's how it went? You know, there are other researchers that say that this event occurred this way. Have you read that? And then they'll say, oh, was there such and such? You know, say, oh, okay, yeah, I read that person too. And you know, that person, you know, is known for taking shortcuts, is known for not, you know, providing proper, you know, so there's a way. So that's if we're using logic. If we're not using logic, if it gets into the irrational space, then my goal is to describe the behavior that I'm seeing. And so it's like you hear yourself out loud, right? You know that you're saying this out loud. I mean, again, it's not insulting me, although I'm wondering if you're saying that because you're seeking to get a rise out of me. You know, because that's not the topic that we were talking about. And it appears as if, you know, you're using the ad hominem so you don't have to improve your argument. I need you to an argument in the debate sense, not in the we're arguing sense. And so a great deal of my time is really spent listening because I value, and this is for goes for most men, particularly in the latter half of the, you know, in terms of the latter half of the 20th century and into the 21st century. With you know, if you talk to your grandfather, your great grandfather about the role, responsibility, and behavioral cues that they had to do in the family, very small, short list. You know, I had to provide for the family, get food, and put food and the water on the table, fix things, and that, you know, what is expected of men today is a radically different list, and the networks that exist where I can talk about and share that are not present. And so what you have in some communities are a hearkening, a kind of twisted nostalgia at what the past was like. And that's what I want to be like my granddad. That was a real man. And it's like, well, but you also say that that was the dude that wasn't there for you and didn't, you know, didn't do these things. And it can't be both things. Or rather, it probably is both things. And I need you to see it clearly as both things. So now we can talk about the fact that you're trying to create from the past something that wasn't real then, and you're trying to impose on a different situation something that's not going to work now, and that is disruptive in its implementation and is a continuation of violence and separation. And for many men, that means it's taking you further out of your body,
Yeah.
further disconnecting you from the very things that you need to be whole and healthy. And that's what I mean. So that's the piece that and so all of that's going on in my head while we're having this, you know, while I'm there with them. But my main piece is to listen,
Yes.
is to fully listen and to be present. And in many respects, my very presence, sorry about that. These modern things, everything is interconnected. My apologies. That was my daughter. I talked her up. But, not but, and. The and is the piece that's also important, is that one of the things that I talk with them about is the perspective or the frame that they view the world in is either or. And so we get into, well, you know, you said, black pride, you know, what about white pride? And I said, I think white pride is hugely important and you should have it. And then they look at me and like, what? I said, yes, because then you'll begin to understand that you're not white, that you have a history, a culture, a place where you come from, descendant, and that has beauty and art and all kinds of things wrapped up in it. And you traded that for power and control and anti-blackness and anti-brownness. And this is what you've lost. And that's why, you know, the culture in general is culture vulturing, and you're taking stuff from other people and traveling the world in some respect without realizing that this stuff existed in your culture already. It was already there. It's always been there. However, when you became white, And now we're having a different conversation. Now
Yes.
it's like, well, who are you really? You know, or are you're seeking to be defined in relationship to me without even knowing who you are. Who are you? And now we got a whole different thing happening with them because now,
Yes.
now they're asking themselves the questions, and I get to add a little bit of commentary, but really it's just more questions. And it's primarily designed to get them one into their body, to disrupt the linearity that they are seeking to impose, even down to the fact that the past was considered ignorant and now we're modern, and that there's progress always upward, always forward, and that there hasn't been starts and stops and influxes of things from different places and different cultures and as we begin to go through, and conversation is different. And so I've been able to spend my time from a honest perspective, because there's a lot that we, but
I don't know if there's anyone here. It looks like we've got a.
oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Okay, great.
Yes. My apologies.
We're back.
All right. My apologies. It dropped off for a second. I'm good.
That was really
Whoa.
valuable input. The essence of what you were sharing about the moment of interaction, because for me, that's the essence of
Mm-hmm.
learning how to open that particular to become bridge makers
Mm-hmm.
in a world where it's really difficult. All our volatilities, all our
Yes.
reactivities can come up right in our face when we
Uh-huh.
feel people are ignorant or in such a different channel or have no desire, or you feel they don't even have empathy or even a desire to understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When that to me is that edge. People who don't even care to understand and they know it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's my edge.
Mm-hmm. And the main piece is to help people learn how to listen. And as you know, as a martial artist, that's the main piece of being able to discern intent appropriately. Is this person, as their energy is coming towards me, and it's not that we're doing this in a hyper vigilant way, but once you've trained, you tend to pay attention to how everyone's moving and feeling around you a bit more closely. And a lot of what I teach for folks is, so now you have this situational awareness. So with that, now you can afford yourself the opportunity to be able to listen and engage fully and be fully present regardless of what's happening around you. Because I've had to have this conversation where I'm unarmed, and that this other person has, they got the 12 gauge, they got the AR-15, and we're having the conversation, and they feel the need to have the weapon so that they can feel a certain way. And I remind folks, like, I got words, and I'm aligned, but that for many people, that is the first thing, that is the first thing, again, that I'm not afraid that, and this is where, the martial science, we refer to it as a aha, or the Montu sciences, where we get into it, where it's that, as WarriorSage was saying, I'm already dead. So all that's left for me to do is to live and do what I was put here to do, because I know I'm in the grave already. So knowing that, that's off the table now. So now I can actually live, because we all know that that's, we all know that's the one way out. But most of us haven't accepted that it's going to happen. And then we don't live our lives that way. So I can go anywhere. And there's no fear. Now, there may be a recognition of mortality. If I'm not careful, this is a real situation here. If I'm not careful, if I'm not in line, if I'm not aligned, and I don't move with the energy, it could be, so that's a recognition of danger. That's an acknowledgement of mortality. That's not fear. And I differentiate between those things because I'm still going to go forward and do what I have to do. And so that's why I tell folks, fear. No, the only thing that people really fear is dying. Everything else, because that's the motivator. Because as a healer, a great deal of my work, I'll deal with folks, and it may take someone 5 years to really get serious. And so you'll hear me talk a lot about making a consistent commitment to a lifestyle change. And it's the same thing dealing with race issues, the same thing, culture issues, systemic institutional oppression, because those things all impact us at the micro level when it comes to what's accessible to me, how can I get it, and what are the decisions. Well, first off, why don't you, cut back on that TV a little bit, that radio a little bit. When's the last time you picked up a book and read a book? When was the last time you went and sat near the lake and just heard the water gurgle, or by a stream and let the water go by you? When was the last time you saw ducks or geese, and not like thinking about them for food, but listen and observe them? When was the last time you danced? The real things that make us human. When was the last time you did those things? Okay, that's a huge part of just getting better. And if you just, just that, if you just did that every day,
Yes.
So that's more what I mean in terms of when you look at communities and you say, oh, why don't they this, or why isn't that there? I say, well, first off, if you put folks in a place where there's not a lot of greenery, and you put folks in, they don't have access to healthy food, you bombard them with media imagery that says that they're not worth anything, and if you don't have money, you don't have anything. What are the rational choices that people, we know what's going to happen. You can use game theory and run through this and see what the potential outcomes are. And game theory basically tells you that 3 to 7% will get out, 1 to 3% will be successful. And if you hold up that 1 to 3% as what is expected of the rest, we know that that's not real and that's not possible based on just the sheer the math of it. And so people have this intrinsic understanding that the math and the system isn't right. However, we don't have the language to be able to describe it fully. So I'll give you another example of how this works out. So the same folks that are, say, like anti-maskers,
Yes.
right now they're talking about this COVID piece, because I've dealt with this a lot. I've lost some of my students have lost family. I've lost family to people, and I've actually helped people get better, that had tested positive for COVID and were going through, and I'm working potentially, talking with my teacher. We may try and actually do some work with those folks that are survivors, with there's a couple of help groups that I'm in real early talks about, to see if there's a way we can offer some support for them, looking at other alternative means other than just the pharmaceuticals to aid folks. And so with that, we have the opportunity to just shift the perspective and the consciousness of folks. And so now we're talking about these anti-mask folks. A lot of these folks are legitimately have concerns, and I'll share it with you like this: that a lot of communities, you have these the so-called white flight communities that developed in the 70s and 80s as the people started integrating in certain areas. That shift occurred at about 7% of either Black or Latino moving in. That's not really observable to the naked eye. If you live in a neighborhood, your neighborhood shifts from one group to another group by 7%. It's not big enough numbers to see that. Okay, now I want you to put that in a parentheses real quick. Now we're going to talk about COVID. COVID is killing between 1 and 5% of the people that get it. Okay, so now if you just look at the numbers of who's had it and who's dying and where they're dying, so if you don't have like a direct relationship to most of the people, you'll never see it.
Yes.
And that's why I raised the white flight. So in other words, you won't even, it's not perceptible to the naked eye unless you're in a workplace or other venue, because it directly impacts your family or community in a way that you see it in larger numbers. So because we don't teach math in the same way here, or physics, or any of the real sciences where math is applied, and I would say also martial arts, where math is applied, folks don't have the understanding to say that just because I'm not seeing it occur doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yes.
And it's happening at a level that is below, we'll say, tactile perception. But that doesn't mean that the other centers in the body that we use for perception aren't available to perceive that there's danger coming. You get me now?
Yeah.
And so this is what I mean about the situational awareness. And so if we talk to folks that are, anti-mask and some of these other pieces in this way, or whatever the topic can be, but I'm talking about mask now because you have folks who want to say that they're not helpful or this and that, and you're blocking my freedoms. And it's that what I really think is, where is your compassion? Because again, I'm not asking you to take a vaccine. I'm not asking you to alter your structure. What I'm asking you to do is put a piece of cloth over your mouth. And to, first off, really, to help people understand, don't breathe with your mouth. Use your nose. So for me, as someone who teaches breathing exercises, it's first off, close your mouth. Use your nose, please. And, I can talk about why, but I want you to use your nose. Your body is specifically created, and for some, they'll say evolved. For me, I'll say created to process through the nostrils. You have the negative ion receptors in the nose, which you get from the environment, from the air, in addition to the fact that the hairs are there to block, get obstacles out of the nostrils as they come in. It's a protection. That the way in which when you look at the internal organs in terms of the membranes that process the air, they're designed to warm the air on the way in and moisturize it so that your body's not getting cold air, which messes with the lungs. So there's this whole process of just breathing properly, which is great and healing for the body. So if you shut your mouth, I know I'm talking a lot today, but if you shut it and you breathe, you have an opportunity because there's I'll try to come back and share an article. There was a guy on he was on Joe Rogan actually. He was talking about mouth breathing and the research that they had done about mouth breathing. The shape of your face changes over time. Your nose changes. All of from the esophagus, the epiglottis, all of those things shift and change. And for humans, it's hugely important because we're dehydrating the body when you use your mouth too much. And that has a huge impact on your overall health and how your immune system functions. And so now we come back into where I was talking about at the beginning about water. And the main issue that we're having, even on the west coast of North America, Turtle Island, where we have the main issue is that the trees are dry. And the main reason that the sickness and the death of the trees is because basically the ambient moisture at the base in the soil has been sucked away because we're doing things that is pulling from the lower level aquifers. And that has, for any third or fourth grader, and hopefully some of y'all as well that have third and fourth graders, the water cycle is being tampered with. And so if you pull the water from the lower aquifers and it is not enough to come around and replace it, that means it's not replaced. And so that means that the stability of the structure the structural integrity of certain areas is now compromised. And so this now we get into oil and gas exploration, natural gas exploration, and all these other things that utilize water at a high rate. And that's where, that 70% of all water use is industrial. And so you start looking and again, water is the one thing everybody needs, but we're not utilizing it in a way that is processing it such that everybody has access to it in the same way. And water is one of the things that is associated with the feminine energies of the planet. And so respect for the water is respect for the feminine. And so if we're not respecting how we deal with the water, that means we really have no respect for women. And we're not having, so in other words, this is now coming to not just words coming out of my mouth. This is how we live every day. So every time you fire that car up and you're driving a gas vehicle, I'm one of them. I'm conscious of the fact that I'm contributing to the death of the feminine on the planet. That with a lot of what's going on, and I'm not saying that to shame anyone, it's just really to contextualize it in a way so that we can move to act, so that the people that work for us are able in this time to, because again, the West Coast of North America is on fire all at the same time. And we're just getting into the fire season. I mean, we're still not out of the fire season. So, and the fact that we call it a fire season already says that we've changed our understanding, and we haven't yet most people have adopted the language and haven't really stopped to contemplate what it means. Because there wasn't a fire season 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there wasn't. There were fires. There wasn't a fire season. And this is what I mean. Even, so we look at this, the overfishing, there's, again, the overglorification of busy, the way in which we utilize and we process, we want something more efficient. Okay, but how efficient is it? Because there's a level, there's a balance between productivity and efficiency, where right now, say like in most places, we're more productive and more efficient with fewer workers than we were 50 years ago. So as we talk about where the jobs are, there's no jobs coming back because so there's a whole restructuring of the society that needs to be re-examined. So that is where a great deal of my work now is in helping folks to understand our role and our relationship in terms of the way we grow food, the way food is then distributed with people, the way we utilize energy, and how that energy is then distributed. I was explaining, it was so hot here, and I was explaining to my son, I was like, well, Baba, why was there a blackout? Why did we have this brownout or whatever? So I'm sketching out real quick for him, and I realized that, most kids don't have a parent at home who could just quickly sketch out for them the local electrical grid and where the problems might be and why it's happening in a way that not just satisfies him, but he could look at it, see it, and probably tell somebody else about it. And then I showed him in the neighborhood what was, where it was and what's happening. And I said, look, there hasn't been a significant upgrade on this electrical grid since Tesla laid it out, 120 years ago. And so we know that there's other more efficient ways to do this. And we also know that what we're doing to the planet is dangerous. So that the dehydration is huge. So if you're on the West Coast, you can see it. The patterns have shifted. The growth patterns have shifted. And I say this to folks, get close to the land and you'll see. Just look in one, like the watermelon season has shifted. So now what I'm talking to people about in some of the circles is, I don't look at the famines that occurred in Ethiopia in the 80s as famine. I look at that as the first real warning stage that we had of climate change and global warming. And that you have folks who have lived this way, Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia, those folks have lived that way for maybe 40, 50,000 years, same way. And so if they've, if that means that, again, if they survived the last glaciation period and there was no change, in what's happening, and the earth changed, and they're still still living the same lifestyle. What is it about this modern lifestyle, modern, that is shifting the way in which we interact with one another and the world in such a way that we're now not even conscious and cognizant of the damage that we're doing? And so I took a chance, and in prepping for this, I saw that you had said, one of your buddies had done the social dilemma. And so I said, well, let me make sure I check this out before I talk with him, because it sounds like it's speaking to some things that I do. Because my wife is an educator, and we work with educators, and she and I frequently banter back and forth around what's progress, what's not progress, what's good for kids, what's not. And I joke with her, and I said, I know that our son has an iPad for school. He's got a laptop for school. I said, but I need you to understand that Steve Jobs and the folks that developed the iPad, the iPod, and all of those handhelds at all those companies, their kids don't play with them. They've forbidden their kids from having them. The schools that their kids go to, they don't have this machine. I said, and that should tell you something about the use and the desire and of why this machine needs to be regulated, particularly among our children. And the other reason I said is, and said, well, why are you that way? I said, because my son had my phone maybe 30 seconds, and I was locked out of my phone. I had to reset. I had to reset the thing, and I was like, what did you do? How you change? I mean, you changed settings and colors, and everything was different. And so it was funny, and I laughed, but also it was like, if it's simple enough that he can do all that quickly, then there's something else going on that I need to watch more closely.
Yes.
And so for me, it's been hugely important, because I'm looking at growing and developing consciousness. I want my children to be able to, the world that I borrowed from them, I want to be able to return it to them in a way that they can still use as well as I was able to. And so I don't look at it as inheritance for them. That's not how I was taught, that I inherited this world. I was raised in a place that I've invested in this world because I borrowed from you. And what I want to do was to give more. And I think you shared something in the WarriorSage group about that one who plants trees that they will not have shade under. That's someone that's concerned about the community. And that's also saying that I want to give to what I've borrowed and enhance, because I don't want to leave it less than the way I got it. If I borrow something, I want you to have it better. I want you to, like, if okay, I don't know if you, it's going to be a silly example, but did you see the other guys with Mark Wahlberg and Will
The
Ferrell?
other guys, yeah, this one, a few years
Okay.
old.
Yes. So there's one scene where they take his gun, and his boss gave him a wood gun. And so then they take the wood gun, and the person gives it back, and they got like a finish on it, and it was like, well, I don't know who took it, but it appears that they it's like some kind of walnut stain on here, and then they polished it for you, but the thing is that they took it, when they gave it back, it was in better condition, and it was able to be something that would add to the posterity.
Yes.
And that's what I want to be able to have us be able to do, so that I'm not leaving a world to them, I'm giving it back. And if we can just get folks to grasp that frame, now it's very different, because it's that when you borrow it, you want to give it back the way you got it, or better.
Yes.
Because if it's an inheritance, it's like, well, I've been able to use up all of this, and here's what's left. That's not gonna work.
Oh, it's beautiful, Inpu. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Brother, in our last few minutes together, us warrior sages are, there's few of us, many of us actually, are being called forward to be more on the front lines in some way. Some of us aren't sure how, some of us aren't sure what to do, how, but there's this emerging calling to step up. Would you share to us, please?
for me, it's make a consistent commitment to a lifestyle change. The way that we're living, we know is not working. We have to choose a different way to live. We want to live in a way that we are in alignment with our mission for why we are here on the planet. And so when I do the things I do every day, it should be in alignment with why I was put here on this planet. And everything that I do should begin in the manifestation of that, the doing of that. So I am Inpu Kamut, opener of the way for the spirit of the mother. So when you see me doing my work, you should see that in what I do. And in those things, so that guy's building community, he's building bridges, he's helping people learn how to live better, to do the things that they need to do to enhance their lives, and then to be more present in the lives of their loved ones. And then that we can now work together to enhance the world that we share. So that is what I would say, that, again, recognize that we share this work. And in that sharing, how are you showing up for your community? And again, this is not to shame anyone. This is not to talk about what you have not done or are not doing. It's what are you doing? And then can you maintain that and then grow and build with that as you grow and build? Because for us as WarriorSage, we know that we're born brand new every day. And that our whole goal is, if it doesn't get accomplished today, what I have done is enough that I could leave this world and say that I have done a good work. Those that were with me are able to say good things about me. My name will be added to those whose names will be remembered and sung, and I will be accepted into the land of my ancestors with good tidings, and my name will hopefully be uplifted and elevated with praise for my works that I have done on this planet. For few are called to this work, and those that are called have got to do the work. Again, whatever it is, do it now. Make the change to consistent commitment for your lifestyle. Make a consistent commitment to a lifestyle change. Peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for.
Brother, how can our friends get in touch with you, find out what you're up to?
Okay, so great. So I'm on Casa, K-H, there we go. Casa, Khasa, Khasa, AHA, AHA, on all social media platforms.
Okay, very good.
That's the best way. Or, Inpu Kamut. So we're in the Facebook space there. You can hit me directly personally, or you can see the things that we're doing with the association, the Kemetic Aha and Sama Association. So we're winding down our fall equinox community fast. It ends on Saturday, but we'll be doing another one for winter. So if you want to check that out and see what we're doing, incorporating Tai Chi Chuan, Qigong, meditation, along with nutrition as a way to help you understand what your mission is and how to get in alignment with it, and then be that benefit to the planet. So I'm a client as well as the president.
Such a joy, such an honor to receive your potent wisdom and your potent clarity for these times. Thank you for your heart and your enduring work, dear sir. Aho.
Thank you. What's up? Peace, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate the time and opportunity. Blessings.
Blessings, family. We'll see you soon.